Today at Petrochemical Strategies, what comes around goes around. Today I'll be talking about plastics recycling with my special guest, Ron Cormier. It's the 1st of July in the year 2020. With the name like Petrochemical Strategies, it's no surprise that I talk a lot about petrochemicals. But petrochemicals production is only half of the story. It's the what comes around. What goes around is also important. Let me explain. In September 2018, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or OECD, presented an environmental policy paper to the G7 Environment, Energy and Oceans Ministers. Plastics have been around for more than a century. Since the 1950s, plastics have become one of the most abundantly produced materials on the planet. To put this into perspective, in 2015, global plastic production was around 407 million tons, which was more than paper, which produced 400 million tons, and more than double fish production at 200 million tons. Plastics have many benefits, including a high strength to weight ratio. They're impermeable to liquids, they have good chemical resistance, they're easy to shape, but most importantly, they're cheap to produce, which makes them a good alternative to traditional materials like cement or metals. But widespread use of plastics has led to global pollution and increased greenhouse gas emissions. Advocacy group Conservation International claims that 8 million metric tons, or about 18 billion pounds of plastic, end up in the ocean each year. This image is from their website of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. There's an estimated 18 trillion pieces of trash in the garbage patch, and it covers an area twice the size of Texas. We all know the term reduce, reuse, recycle. However, we don't do a very good job of recycling. The EPA reports that recycling 10 water bottles produces enough energy to power a laptop computer for about 25 hours. In 2017, the recycling rate in the US was a mere 8.4% of plastic production. On a bright note, the recycling rate for high-density polyethylene bottles and PET bottles was closer to 30%. However, as you can see, the vast majority of plastic continues to end up in landfills. Earlier, I spoke to Ron Cormier. He's the managing partner of Rock Bottom Enterprises. Ron spent 35 years in the chemical industry, working for companies such as Dow, Marubeni, Sunoco, Westlake GTC, Woodmac, and Contanda. Ron's experience spans production, sales and marketing, integration, and logistics. When Ron and I spoke, we talked about his company and a little bit about his thoughts about plastics recycling. Here's that conversation.
Hello, Ron. I'm glad you're here so that we can talk a little bit about your company, Rock Bottom Enterprises, and a little bit about the plastics recycling market. Since we're talking about recycling, I decided to go sit out in nature, and it happens to be storming a little bit. So if you hear a little bit of lightning, and there's some frogs singing over here in the background too. So if you hear some of that noise in the background, I apologize, but I'm glad to be back to nature, and I'm glad to have the opportunity to talk to you. So before we get talking about the topic, you started Rock Bottom Enterprises in 2019 after an impressive career in the petrochemicals industry. Tell me a little bit about your company, mission, vision, and customers who you serve.
So the company, I guess on a catalog look, still trades a bit. We do bespoke consulting towards many trade flows, supply, demand, forward look kinds of businesses and possibilities, probabilities that clients are having a little trouble maybe fostering themselves indoors at their own shops. And then hopefully offering some plausible black swan trends, the things that come out of nowhere and surprise us. I think we've seen plenty of those in 2020 alone.
So you and I have had a chance to talk offline about your thoughts on recycling. So where do you see the industry today in terms of its effectiveness in collecting plastics and recycling them?
Yeah, look, over that many years, certainly we've gone from a very single-use mentality on many of these fabricated polymer goods and just simply let them end up in landfill. I don't think that bothered a lot of at least the OECD world for a long time, but we learned over time making a bunch of virgin plastic that ends up laying around the earth in landfills, and then certainly on our same thing on our fuels side, and emissions into the air and water. We've got to take a look at what we do and how we move over the earth. But I heard an interesting number the other day on the anniversary of Earth Day. I guess the EPA came in the 70s, so it's been 50 years of Earth Day, and there was a number that came out of that that really just hit me like a bolt of lightning, and that was some 80 billion pounds of scrap polymer sits on the planet in some unintended, scrapped, uncontrolled state. So I think we know on a scientific thinker anyway knows that we can't continue that in the environment. We have to do something a little bit differently.
So that's a good lead into my next question. I think the current model of households separating their plastics, putting them in the recycle bin, then getting shipped off to be sorted, and a lot of those plastics just get discarded anyway because they're dirty or they have labels on it. So what are some of the emerging technologies that are coming out that will improve the effectiveness of recycling?
Quite encouraging on that front. Even little old Rock Bottom Enterprises has dealt with a client who is in that vein of business these days, and quite interesting that their process takes scrap polymer of recycling marks 1 through 7, the little number that's in the triangle on the bottom of the good when you flip it over a Dixie cup or something like that. Literally, they can take those products in an unseparated, largely unclean state. They do knock off large particulates and sticky mud and food products, those kinds of things. But their patented process reverse reacts these things back to their aromatics constituents, which is very, very encouraging. That's one less gallon, barrel, or metric ton that a company needs to make virgin to replace that product. So those are the kinds of things I think that are breakthroughs that we haven't been able to do before, and very encouraged with that.
I think the public perception about plastics for medical applications and food packaging has changed a little bit with COVID-19. So what do you think the impact is going to be for other uses like grocery bags and items like that?
I guess my initial reaction to that, Robert, may be a little unpopular with our thinking along these lines and how we develop and evolve. But I think, too, until there's a vaccine for COVID-19, we're, if anything, maybe going to have to rely on single-use plastics a bit more in the short haul in the next 18 months, 2 years, until technology comes up with some way to positively beat the virus. We may use more single-use plastic grocery bags, food containment, medical kinds of things. PPE certainly in that time period are going to be items that aren't meant to be used again. Maybe recycled, but reuse, repurpose, I think will be a lower denominator during the immediate near future.
Well, Ron, I want to thank you for spending a few moments here and sharing some of your insights into the industry. And I wish you, your family, everyone's safe and all the best success for Rock Bottom Enterprises.
Perfect. Thank you, Robert. And thanks to you and to Petrochemical Strategies as well.
What comes around must go around. I'd say if you fail at doing something correctly 75% of the time, you're probably doing something wrong. Today, we put 75% of produced plastics in the US into landfills, which I'd say we're doing something wrong. So we talked about emerging technologies which would potentially increase the amount of plastic recycling here in the US. We are going to leave this planet to our kids and grandkids, and it's our obligation to leave it in the best condition we possibly can. That's why these emerging technologies are important. Thank you for watching today at Petrochemical Strategies. You can see a full transcript of this blog plus all the references on the website petrochemicalstrategies.com. My name is Robert Sawchuk, and I will see you next time.